Hey everybody, today I'm going to give you 3 reasons why using a framework is super beneficial. Reason number 1 is what I like to call default to defaults. Now this might sound kind of weird, like what is this guy talking about, default to defaults? Well, you know how in a framework like, say in like Ionic or Angular, maybe you're building a game even, using Unity, doesn't really matter, any sort of software tool, software framework, it always has these default behaviors like the default look and feel of user interface, maybe like by default how the physics work in this engine you're using, whatever it is. The benefit I'm describing here is that if you just use these defaults, you can find out very quickly if your application is working or not. Like you can get a great sense of if it's on the right track, if people like it, if it's solving a need. If it's working the way you want it to. You can find that out all very quickly by using a system with a bunch of defaults that help you just quickly navigate, build something, get it done, prototype it. And the more functionality there is baked into these defaults, the better it is for you. Maybe you can even leave it that way. And then once it's working later, you can just customize it to your heart's intent and you'll be just fine. So that is benefit number 1, is if you default to the defaults of the program software framework you're using, your life is going to be a lot easier for developing new products. Benefit number 2 is abstraction. Let's take Angular as an example. It uses high-level tools like components and providers, and then SCSS in order to compile down into lower-level technologies like JavaScript and CSS. So you're able to work at a much higher level of abstraction, and that helps you focus on the bigger concepts, allowing you to move a lot more weight, get a lot more done, knock those tasks off your task list, impress your boss. Whatever your goal is to do, you're just going to be able to do a whole lot more work. Granted, this usually is a trade-off between control and automation. Like, if the framework does some things for you, then that means you don't have control exactly over those things. But a good framework will allow you a good balance where you can still configure it as much as you would need to, but the defaults, again, are just amazing. And so using these abstractions, you're often able to completely avoid or escape duplicate code by abstracting things into providers. If you're using Angular, or if you're using Unity, you can abstract them into classes, or like prefabs or objects. That probably doesn't make any sense to you if you aren't using Unity, but whatever framework you're using, they often provide tools so that you can avoid duplicating things and provide a generic solution for whatever problem you're solving. The third and final benefit I'm going to list off for you guys today is going to be trodden workflows. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the people who made the framework, they often have a very in-depth understanding of the types of problems you'll be solving. And so what they've done is they've actually included things in their framework to help you chain together all of your pieces that you're using in some larger scheme workflow. So an example might be like if you have a button in your user interface, there's usually a very intuitive way to link that up so that it actually does something. That's just a basic workflow example, but the more robust the framework is, the better these trodden workflows are going to be. And the reason I call it a trodden workflow is because the people who built the framework, they often have just a great understanding of this problem. They've done the thing that you're doing 1,000 times, and they wanted to abstract it into a framework for you. And so they've created these elaborate workflows. And I mean, sometimes they're not elaborate, sometimes they're more simple, but they usually do have some more complex ones in there as well, just because they know exactly what you're doing. So in summary, we've covered defaulting to defaults, making sure that you just use the default behavior in the framework in order to push as much weight as possible, impress your boss, get your product out the door faster, and see if this thing works. Do that as quickly as possible. That is benefit number 1. Benefit number 2 is you can escape duplicate code by using the abstractions built into the framework itself in order to transcend duplicate code so you don't have to write things twice, and then when you have to change something, you don't have to change it a million times because you wrote the code without a framework. And number 3 we covered was trodden workflows. The people who built the framework have been in your shoes before many a time, and they've built these systems which you can use, these workflows, in order to link your app together so that it works seamlessly. The user experience is nice and you don't have to do any extra boilerplate work. Alright, that's all I have for you in this video. If you're subscribed, I will see you next time.